Welcome to another exciting episode of the Contractor Business Builder podcast. Today, we have the honor of hosting Eric Anderton. He is a business and executive coach with Construction Genius. So, your business will only grow to the level of your leadership. Eric Anderton has coached contractors doing $10 million to $1 billion in revenue. Today, he's revealing why leadership, not labor, is the real constraint in most construction companies. Welcome here, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thank you for having me, Derek.
Great. Yeah, excited to dive into all this with you. Leadership's so incredibly important in every avenue of life, especially business. Can you tell us a little bit more about Construction Genius and what that means?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that a lot of construction companies have is when they promote someone into a leadership role. Let's say I was a project manager running a project and I'm now project executive leading a team of people. I have to make the shift from being a project builder to being a team builder, a people leader. And that shift is often tremendously challenging for people. And I help people make that shift.
Perfect. Right on. And where did the name Construction Genius originate from? What made you think of that?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. People often will say, well, Eric, does that make you the genius? And I say, no, it comes from the quote from Thomas Edison that genius is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. So my clients are the 99%. I'm the 1% to help them to take it to the next level.
Yeah, very true words there. Gotta put in the action to get the results. They don't just come from thinking a whole bunch. I mean, it's important, but yeah, you got to do stuff to get shit done, right? So you talk about the big shift from building projects to building people.
Yeah.
And what does that transformation look like? What are some of the difficulties or friction that comes through that transformation?
One of the biggest challenges, it's interesting. Most people get into construction because they like to start their day at this point and finish it at this point, and in between build something awesome and have a good time doing it. They got into construction because they like working with their hands. They like being able to drive down the road and point at something and say, I built that. And when you get promoted into a leadership role, oftentimes there's a disconnect that begins to happen because I'm no longer building something with my hands. I'm directing and leading people who are doing the building. And so what can happen is a couple of things. Number one, I get a sense of guilt because I don't feel like I'm working anymore. And so what that then leads me to do is to micromanage so that I feel good about myself. And I get stuck in getting my hands dirty with the guys when in fact, my job is to get myself out of the dirt and help them to be more effective in the things that they do. So what happens is that sense of guilt or discomfort that comes from getting promoted then leads to micromanagement. And that defeats the whole purpose of leadership, which is to accomplish more through other people.
Yeah, there's definitely articulated well with the kind of the mindset and thinking shift that needs to be done there. And it kind of ties in a little bit with getting out of your comfort zone is if you've come from that realm of being project manager or even on the tools and stuff like that, you have that sense of building something and as you mentioned with leadership, as you move into higher leadership, you're really you're building a team, you're building people, you're building the structure to get things done. And the issue can be that you want to be more involved with the day-to-day or micromanaging, as you put it. What are some maybe tools or ways that you can help someone kind of make that shift or you know recognize if they are getting too far into the weeds, if you will, of micromanaging?
Well, I think part of it is assuming that you are going to micromanage when you start because that's just what you're used to doing. In other words, you're used to being a builder, and so you're going to default to doing that. So with that assumption in mind, you then have to take a step back and ask yourself, okay, what do I need to do in order to develop my people to the point where I'm comfortable with them doing the tasks that I've given them to do? Because many times I'll micromanage because my people are either incompetent to do the work or they're not held accountable to a sufficient level in order to execute the projects and the tasks that they've been given. So I need to make sure that I'm training my people, that I'm delegating effectively and clearly to them, and then that I'm holding them accountable. So if I have people who are well trained, people who have a clear understanding of what's expected of them, and then people who are held accountable, I can then focus on the training, the communication, and the accountability. And that then takes me out of the micromanagement.
Yeah, important steps there. I have someone I'm working with who I think accountability is an issue at the company right now. Everyone's sort of it's one of those things where they've sort of hired people and then they make a role for them instead of having a role for a person and being more strategic, I guess, with the structure of their business. What are some ways that accountability can be increased, or even like, I feel like the owner's ability of leadership is not quite up to par maybe, or has been. And is kind of everyone sort of running their own show, if you will, but nobody seems to kind of know what's going on. I know I'm kind of throwing a bunch at you here, but
No, no, it's
I
good.
feel
It's
like
good.
accountability is kind of at the center of a lot of that. How would you go about defining that situation and putting accountability measures in place?
Yeah, that's very good. So the first thing you need to do, obviously, is be crystal clear on the role and the responsibility of each person in your organization. And it's probably best to first outline specific roles and responsibilities prior to inserting people into those roles and responsibilities. Assuming that you have someone in a position that is capable of filling that role and responsibility, the leaders in the organization then have to become master delegators. And to master delegation, there's three things that you have to focus in on. Number one, am I clear in what I'm delegating? And that may seem obvious, but oftentimes the reason why people don't execute the tasks that I'm giving them to do is because I'm unclear in my communication. And the reason I'm unclear in my communication is because I am an expert at what I do and what I want them to do. And therefore, I am doing many things unconsciously, which I then don't communicate clearly to them. And so they aren't able to execute the task to the fullness of my expertise. And so, what I have to be able to do when I'm delegating is to get crystal clear on what someone needs to do. And one very effective method of doing that is pretty simple. What I would advise someone to do is go to ChatGPT and turn on the dictation mode in ChatGPT, and then ramble into ChatGPT for a period of time about what it is you want someone to do. Try and include the things that you do subconsciously or the things that you're very good at that often people fail at when doing this particular task. And once you've talked for a while into ChatGPT, then ask it to create a SOP or standard operating procedure based on the information that you've given the engine. ChatGPT will then create an SOP. Of course, you need to check it for BS and for bad information. But then what you can do is take a look at that SOP, make any tweaks that you'd like to that information, and then present that to the person to whom you're delegating. The whole idea of that is so that you can be crystal clear on what it is that you want them to do. Does that make sense so far?
100%. No, you're speaking my language with the SOPs. That's a big part of what we do, building systems processes. And yeah, clarity is definitely high priority for being able to delegate effectively and having a resource like that where you've expressed as the owner, the person, manager that's done this before. You've got a certain way, like you mentioned. I've had this happen to me countless times, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Where you are the expert in that realm, and you're going to explain things in a way that makes sense to you, given your years of experience and knowledge. Whereas someone else who thinks differently, talks a little differently, has much different experience from, maybe in other companies or just not as many years. And there's going to be stuff lost in communication or not expressed explicitly.
Let me just give you the other couple of
Yep.
things here with delegation, because that was what we're going to. The second thing I have to ask, if I've been clear in what I'm asking someone to do, then I must ask the question, are they capable? And what I mean by that is, do they have the training necessary in order to execute this task? Because one of the reasons why delegation fails and accountability is difficult is because I give people tasks to do that they don't know how to do. And if I give them something to do that they don't know how to do, don't be surprised when they don't do it. And so I must ask that question, are they capable? Assuming that they're capable, assuming that I've been clear, the last thing I need to ask while I'm delegating is, do they have the capacity? And what I mean by that is simply the bandwidth. Because many times what people do in companies is they keep delegating to the people who are most capable. And the people who are most capable keep saying, yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that, until they get overcapacitated, their performance starts to dip, and the company begins to suffer. So if I'm going to delegate effectively, I must first be clear on what I'm delegating. I must make sure the person is capable. I must then make sure they have capacity. And if all those things are in place, I have now earned the right to hold them accountable. And when I hold them accountable, I must keep it very simple. 3 questions. Did you do it? If not, why not? How can I help? And as a leader, the more consistent you are with accountability, the less drama will be associated with accountability. Because if we let time go by, typically pain increases and the difficulty of the conversations that I must have in terms of accountability increase. And that's why, as a leader, I must have a consistent rhythm of accountability to make sure that things stay on track.
Definitely. And that conversation that would be had as far as accountability, how do you usually see that, or how would you suggest it? Is it some sort of reporting that happens, or would it be, regular check-ins or conversations?
And the answer is it depends. And what it depends on is the experience of the person who's doing the task. So, for instance, I may delegate for the first time to someone who I consider capable, but because it's the first time that they've done this task, I may need to check in on them more frequently than someone who has more experience. So, but the idea of experience comes into play. The idea of the person's willingness to execute comes into play. So if I'm suspect that someone is going to execute and I know that they are going to need a little more accountability, a little more checking in, then that will change the rhythm of the accountability conversations. And what I'm always doing when I'm having accountability conversations is I'm combining the metrics of the job that are related to the task with conversations. And I'm using the metrics and conversations to come up with the material that I need for those accountability conversations.
Now, beyond delegating and accountability, what are some mistakes that you see when maybe someone who's been functioning at a high level gets put into a leadership position, or even a leader, maybe at a more junior or project level, gets promoted to more of like executive leadership level? Where do you see like mistakes or kind of pitfalls for leaders that are expanding?
Yeah, it's great. I think one of the main issues is that the reason someone gets promoted into a leadership role is because they have said yes multiple times in multiple ways. However, when you get into a leadership role, you must learn to say no. If you don't learn to say no, what will happen is you will be unable to execute your role as a leader. And what I mean by that, if you're going to be an effective leader, you have to be able to carve out time in your calendar for the tasks that you didn't previously do in terms of meeting one-on-one with people, in terms of thinking strategically, perhaps even meeting with customers. And that will require you being very disciplined about how your time is being used, because there will always be demands on your calendar from other people for various reasons. And that's exactly why the best leaders not only say yes when appropriate, but they also learn to say no. And just like someone might feel uncomfortable when they take off their tool belt and become more of a project manager or a project executive, so too someone who is used to saying yes all the time may be uncomfortable when they have to learn how to say no.
Yeah, important concept there. Can you unpack that a bit as far as what maybe like priorities or things that they will most likely need to say no to, or how they could structure or think about their time of what's important, what they should do, and what they could possibly, put on the back burner or get off their plate.
Yeah, so it's really interesting you use the word important. One of the key tools that I use with all of my clients and I teach them is the Eisenhower matrix, or the urgent important matrix. Okay, so the urgent important matrix is a very simple framework. I just kind of sketched it out here, right? I mean, I don't think you can even see it. You might see it a little bit right here.
Yeah,
So let me turn it. Yeah, there we go. So you have urgent and important, right?
yeah,
And so what I have to be able to do is focus on the things that are in my role and responsibility that are either important but not urgent, and then important and urgent. Now, the problem is many times leaders have their time sucked away by interruptions and distractions from other people or even from within themselves that keep them from focusing on the things that are important and urgent to them in their role and responsibility. So the thing that you want to learn to say no to is other people trying to put onto your plate things that are their responsibility. So that will mean that when someone comes to you and asks you to do a task that is outside of your role and responsibility, and you know that it will distract you or interrupt you from focusing in on what you must do, then you must have the discipline and the courage to tell them no.
wonderful. Yeah, that clarifies things a lot. And I think kind of goes back to the earlier thing, which mentioned, having those defined roles and responsibilities so that people can determine, hey, this is actually something that you need to spearhead and take forward or you can get done so I can focus on, whatever it is that I'm responsible for.
Absolutely.
So with your coaching process, you're helping leaders kind of go from maybe being the boss to being a leader of leaders. Can you talk a bit more about the coaching work you do with leaders and owners of companies?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd want to say, and it's funny, I was chatting with one of my clients about it yesterday. I am very poor at fixing underperformers. So the work that I do is not what I call firefighting. I'm more Smokey the Bear than the whoever the fireman is with the red hat that goes around. So, what is that one? The fireman. What's his name?
Yeah, I'm not sure,
I don't know.
but
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
so you
Mhm,
don't want to come to me if you're trying to save someone. You want to
mhm,
come to
mhm.
me if you have a good performer, a high performer who needs to take their game to the next level. That's where I excel in terms of my services. And so the people who come to me are someone who's just been promoted into a role and they know that they're going to have those challenges of the shift from being a project builder to being a people leader. They know that they're going to have to learn how to protect their time, focus on what's most urgent and important, get really good at accountability, get really good at delegation, and they're just taking their game to the next level. I'm here to help them with that. And the way that I do that is through conversations. So through the conversations, we help to identify what's most important to them. We help to identify the roadblocks that are keeping them from focusing on those things, remove those roadblocks, and then I hold them accountable for the things that they do in order to take their leadership to the next level.
And you work with larger companies, if you will, but a big range there. You 10 million to a billion.
Yeah.
How do you see the difference there as far as maybe the contractors that are at that, you know, eight figure compared to 9+ figure leaders? Does the conversations change quite a bit? Is there things that, let's say, one like, people talk about scaling a business, right? So let's say they're at that 10 million mark, they want to go to the 100 million or plus. What does that kind of trajectory look like, and how do you help facilitate that kind of growth?
Yeah, in terms of scaling the business, that's not a lot of the work that I do. I do more of the work that I do is on the communication side, on the
Yep.
team building side, on the self control side, you could say. And so the issues that human beings have, whether you're in a $10 million company or a $3 billion plus company, you'll
Yep.
find that they're typically the same. And so my services, they affect people in all of those areas. The one thing to keep in mind, and I want to make this clear. Number one, I'm not a firefighter, and number two, I'm not cheap either. and so
Yep.
and so it's really important for anyone who's listening to this. If you go to my website, constructiongenius.com, and you can get a 10-minute call with me, but you've got to understand those two things going in. If your business is on fire, I'm not the guy for you. And if you're not willing to invest a considerable sum in the services, then I'm not a fit for you either. And of course, that is based on the fact that you see the value in working with me as a result of the conversations that we have prior to engaging in any coaching.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for clarifying that and letting the listeners know. So let's dive into communication a bit. When you've got a company that's been built up, you've
Yep.
got your different functions, your finance team and your project team, your operations, your admin. How do you like what do you I guess see as far as like how much communication should be happening back and forth, and what are the best methods? I know you've got your kick-ass meeting, I think it is,
Oh yeah.
that you talk about and things like that. So what are some of the things that these businesses should be thinking about for communication company wide?
So the challenge with construction is that there is a tendency for silos to occur, right? So you've got the field, you've got the office or project management, and then you have the accounting and the HR folks. And the problem is, this is a human problem. We all think that we are the most important person on the planet, right? And so therefore, my department is the most important department in the company, right? Or my job. And one of the things that you have to understand is that for a construction company to be successful, each element of the business needs to be working together well. But you must understand where a construction company makes money. And the thing to really be clear on is that unless the work gets put in place, money is not made. And so the best construction companies, they give a tremendous amount of respect and attention to the folks in the field putting the work in place. And they balance that with the need to control and systematize that work through the project management and through the various financial controls so that the entire company is working together well. And the key to that is this. If you have a conflict between, let's say, your project management side and your field side, it's likely the result of a poor relationship at the top of those silos. So for instance, if you have a project executive who hates your general superintendent, don't be surprised if your project manager and your superintendent and your foreman don't get along together well. So the number one thing that you want to focus on in your business to improve the synergy and the teamwork of your entire business is making sure that the executive levels of your company across the various silos have very strong relationships. And you must not tolerate at the executive level walls between the people who are involved in those positions.
Yeah, well said there. And what does the communication or meeting process look like to have that communication in the executive level of managers there?
Yeah, so there's two aspects to it. There's the formal and the informal. Okay. So one thing that's critical is you must understand who is ultimately responsible for the success of a project. And that person must be willing to take accountability for that particular project. And there's always sort of a blending of success based on what the field does and what project management does. But someone, either the field or project management, needs to be ultimately accountable for the success of the project. With that being said, there needs to be strong communication between the various aspects of the business. And so you should be obviously having formal meetings on a regular basis where you're able to exchange ideas and views on how a project is going. Now, most companies I know have those formal meetings already. However, it's the informal meetings where the real work of breaking down the silos takes place. And so if you have an issue between a couple of people in your organization that are high performers, but for whatever reason they don't get along well, one thing that you have to facilitate with them is them breaking bread together. They don't have to be the best of friends. They don't have to hang out on the weekends. They don't have to go over to each other's house, but they should at least be having lunch once a month where they can sit and they can eat and they can talk about things other than work and get to know each other. Because people, if you know someone, if you like them, if you trust them, then those barriers can be broken down. And so get them to break bread together in order to build that relationship. And then as an executive, take serious time to consider where is trust breaking down and why is trust breaking down? And then you have to go to work on fixing that in order to make sure those silos and those barriers don't occur in your business.
Yeah, the trust factor, very important. And what you mentioned about having those, breaking bread meetings or whatever it may be, so people can see, we're all humans here. We all have, similar worries and lives and stuff like that to some degree. And it's more than just the working relationship there. So you've got something called the kick-ass meeting, I believe.
Yes.
Can you unpack that and run us through what that looks like?
Yeah, no, dude, it's beautiful. So this is a particular type of meeting structure, and I'll give you a link so people can download the book. And it's not a book, it's an ebook. It's nice and short. It's a meeting structure specifically for solving problems. And so the first thing you have to be able to do when you're looking to solve a problem is you have to state the challenge well. And the way you find out where your problems exist in your business is through a combination of your intuition, your objective numbers that you have in your business, and then combining your intuition and your numbers with conversations in order to clarify what the problem is. Once you have the problem clearly identified, let's say you have a safety issue on your projects, then you would frame the problem in terms of a question. And the way you frame the question is like this: in what specific ways can we, and then you insert the problem. So in this case, the problem would be improve safety on every project that we build. But the key is the question format. And again, let me repeat that. In what specific ways can we, and then you insert the problem that you want to solve. And the key word in that question is the word specific, because when you're looking to problem solve, you want to be as specific as possible, because the more specific you are, the more actionable you can be. Then what you do, let's say you're looking to solve a safety problem. Obviously, you bring people in from the field, you bring people in from the office who are working on the projects, and you bring your best and brightest minds into the room, and you have everyone brainstorm ideas on how to solve the problem. And then you prioritize those ideas based on what people vote on. And in the Kick-Ass Meeting ebook, it's all laid out how to do that. But the point is that you can go from a blank piece of paper with just the problem stated to unanimous agreement on what we're going to do to overcome the problem. And you can do that in less than 37 minutes. From there, you can build a simple one-page action plan. And so in less than an hour, you can go from problem to action plan and really focus in on what you need to do in order to take on your toughest challenges in your business.
Powerful framework. And I like how you have some time in there to really define and clarify the problem. I think a lot of people jump to a solution and, just glaze over actually what is the actual problem here. And then, brainstorming with the team so everyone's got buy-in. What is the best solutions that we can all come up with, and then prioritizing them, clarifying again in the one pager so everyone's clear, and then moving forward with action. So fantastic. Can you share a success story of a client of yours, maybe where they started, why they hired you, and what the outcomes were for them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I have on my website, you can go to my website, constructiongenius.com/clients, and you can see a whole bunch of different testimonials from clients who have worked with me. And I'll tell you, one person is a woman named Stephanie Fuller, who is the vice president at George Reed Incorporated. And she was initially hesitant to engage in executive coaching because of the cost, the time commitment, and frankly, the vulnerability involved with opening up about her personal weaknesses and leadership blind spots and even internal company dynamics. But she pushed through that and she committed to working with me. And as a result of that, she experienced a tremendous amount of growth from the things that she was willing to identify and then work on. And what she really liked about it was that I get right to the point. My style is consistent, direct, and no BS. I cut through the noise. I address real challenges to help her to identify the confident decisions that she needs to make. And then I hold her accountable with the clear timelines and follow-throughs. And so from conflict resolution to running more effective leadership meetings, she saw an immediate ROI, and it's really helped her to up-level her game as a leader in her organization.
Fantastic. Yeah, having someone experienced and that, second set of eyes, if you will, that can see things from more of a distance, and especially as business owners, leaders, you can get really plugged in and maybe been doing things certain ways for years and just never realize that there's these kind of glaring issues or things that can be holding you back, or just creating, ineffective teams and things like that. Can you speak a little bit about what the internal leadership and coaching, like training program, if you will, like, is that something that you've helped with, or like how do you see those internal, like you've got the leader of the company or your executive team, how do they kind of facilitate leadership or train their people to be better leaders in their companies?
Yeah, so I have a leadership course that I have with my clients. You can take it online. It's called The Shift, and it's a 5-module leadership course, and it's something I also do in person with my clients and also over Zoom. And so The Shift is a comprehensive course specifically for construction companies. The first module is all about controlling your calendar, not your time. The second one is about leadership communication. Then we talk about building and leading a high-performing team, running effective meetings like you and I have talked about, Derek. We have a whole module on that. And then also the Construction Leaders Dashboard, which is a comprehensive look at where you want to go with your career as a leader. And so it's a comprehensive leadership program that people run both internally with their teams and also bring me in to facilitate with them as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, we'll put links to these resources that Eric has mentioned here in the description of the audio video, wherever you're listening or watching to this. So go check out those resources and learn more about Eric and the Construction Genius team. Any final kind of words of wisdom or insights that you wanted to share with us, Eric?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I said earlier that my services are not cheap, and that's true. However, one way that you can get to know me more, which a lot of people have really liked, is I do have a podcast myself with over 350 episodes. Those are 100% free. And then you can also go online to Amazon and get my book, Construction Genius. And that's only $19 or $20 for a paperback. And I'd like to give your audience a special offer on that. If you buy 10 or more copies of my book, reach out to me via my website. And if you do buy those 10 or more copies, which is about $200, I'll come in and do an hour Q&A and training session for you at no additional charge over Zoom. And I'd normally charge $3,500 for an hour of my time. But if you buy 10 of the books for your audience, Derek, I'll do that at no additional charge.
Wonderful. very, very generous. So yeah, we will put links as I mentioned. Go grab yourself some books and learn all the great stuff about resources that Eric has here. Be a better leader, build better teams. I mean, it's I don't know, leadership is so incredibly important, and it just makes a business kind of makes you want to be a part of something special, right? Good leaders kind of build businesses like that where everyone feels that they're heard, they're part of the team, they're growing, they're on a winning team, right? And it really is a beautiful thing when you see that strong leadership in an organization. So thank you so much for coming on here today, Eric. Really appreciate you sharing all your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Derek.